Okay, so we have finally reached the last of our points of concurrency, which is going to be the orthocenter, which is where the altitudes meet. So I thought we'd take a minute just to go back and review all of the segments and the points of concurrency that we've done so far and just include altitudes in that as well. So if we start with perpendicular bisectors, remember that the perpendicular bisector is it's perpendicular to a side of the triangle, and specifically at the midpoint. I'm going to do a little abbreviating here, okay? MP for midpoint. The point of concurrency. The point of concurrency is called the circumcenter. Okay, so then what did we learn about the circumcenter? We learned that the circumcenter is the same distance to each of the vertices or corners of the triangle. Okay, so it's the same distance from the circumcenter to the vertices of the triangle. And then we found out that when it was acute, it was inside. When it was obtuse, it was outside. And when it was right, it was on the hypotenuse. Specifically on the midpoint of the hypotenuse. Okay, so that's kind of a circumcenter in a nutshell. Okay, so that we went and we learned about angled bisectors. Just remember that an angled bisector breaks an angle into two equal pieces, breaks the angle into two equal pieces. And we learned that that the name of that point of concurrency was the incenter. Okay, and we also learned that the incenter is the same distance to the sides of the triangle. And I'm just looking at what I wrote for the one right above, and it says is the distance to each is the same distance. So that should have been is the same distance. I should have put that up there. All right, and then the incenter is always inside. Doesn't matter whether it's acute, right, or obtuse, it's always on the inside. And then the last one that we've done was the median, and the median goes from the vertex, which is the corner of the triangle, to the midpoint, MP, midpoint of the opposite side. And we learned that that point was called the centroid. Okay, and those couple of things that we learned about the centroid is that number one, okay, let's see here, the first thing that we learned about the centroid, okay, is that we can find the centroid by averaging our x's and y's. And that, of course, is when we're given ordered pairs. We have to actually have ordered pairs to do that. And then the second thing we found is that when you compare the length of the whole median, so that would be our denominator, to the length of from the vertex to the centroid, that fraction will always simplify to 2/3 or approximately 0.66 repeating. Okay, so those were the two things that we learned with the centroid, and the centroid is always on the inside. So now what you are going to do is you're going to finish watching this lesson video, and it's going to take you through talking about altitudes, Orthocenter, and the properties that go along with it, and where you actually find the Orthocenter, inside, outside, on, always in a particular place, things like that. So go ahead and move on to the next slide, and you can kind of start learning a little bit more about altitudes and orthocenters. Okay, so the orthocenter are basically, it's the point of concurrency for the altitudes. Remember, the altitude goes from, just a reminder, from a vertex and is perpendicular to the opposite side. Okay, so that orthocenter is where the altitudes meet. In an acute triangle, the orthocenter, just like on the circumcenter, was inside. Okay, obtuse, it's outside. And on a right, it's on the triangle, but not just anywhere on the triangle. It is on it. And remember when we had circumcenter, it was on the hypotenuse. This time it is on the right angle. And you should have discovered that yesterday when you did your GeoGebra activity. Okay, so now we just want to graph a couple of triangles here and decide based on if the triangle is acute, obtuse, or right, whether that orthocenter would be inside, outside, or on. Okay, we're not actually drawing the altitudes and things like that. We can sketch them in here, but we're just going to decide based on what type of triangle it is, whether it would be inside, outside, or on. Okay, so if we plot our points, so I went ahead and plotted these points, and we need to decide if it's acute, obtuse, or right. Well, sometimes it's kind of hard to tell, so we have to remember a couple things about perpendicular lines. I'm kind of curious about whether or not this angle right here is a right angle or not. And remember, if it is a right angle, that's perpendicular. Remember, perpendicular slopes are opposite sine and reciprocal. So if I find the slope of this line, this blue line right here, and the slope of this line, if they are perpendicular, opposite reciprocal slopes, then that is a right angle. So we just want to double check to see if it is or not. So the slope of what I highlighted in blue here is rise over run. Remember, its slope is rise over run. So I rise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I run 1, 2, 3. So the slope of this line is positive 5 over 3. The slope of what I have highlighted in green, I rise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I went down 5, so that's negative 5. And I run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my slopes are not opposite reciprocals, which means it's not a right angle. Just wanted to double check that. So we know it's not right, and I can look at it and tell that it is not obtuse. It is acute, which means our orthocenter would be inside. Again, we're not going to actually find where the altitudes are each time. We're just going to graph our triangles. Okay, so this one, let's plot our points, A, B, and C. Okay, so I went ahead and plotted those 3 points, and as you can tell, angle A is acute and angle C is acute, but angle B is an obtuse angle. It is greater than 90 degrees, because if it was this right here, would be 90 degrees. And BC is a little bit further down, which means that's going to be greater than 90 degrees, which means it is an obtuse triangle. And therefore, since it's obtuse, it would be on the outside. Okay, last one here. We're going to plot this triangle. Okay, so I went ahead and plotted that triangle, and we want to know, is it a obtuse, acute, or right? Well, as I'm looking at angle K, I notice that it is right on a square corner here, where it is exactly 90 degrees, so I know that this is a right triangle, and if it is a right triangle, then that orthocenter would be on that triangle. Okay, so once you're finished with your notes and the lesson video here, you can work on your class kick, which is called Orthocenter and Altitudes class kick. So make sure you're in the right class kick. Have a great day.